Scene geometry is often very complex, and this makes it very inefficient for calculating navigation paths. Instead, we can use something called a NavMesh, which is basically short for navigation mesh. This mesh is a very simple version of the floors of our scenes, and it defines which surfaces are walkable and which are not. Creating or building a NavMesh is referred to as baking a NavMesh. In order to bake a NavMesh, we need to go to the navigation window. I'm going to go there now by clicking Window, Navigation. As you can see, the navigation window has opened up, and it's docked itself on the right-hand side of my editor, right next to the Inspector tab. This navigation window has 3 tabs: the Object tab, the Bake tab, and the Areas tab. In the Bake tab, we can see all of the properties that are currently relevant for us. We have properties like the agent radius, which is approximately how wide we assume our NavMesh agents are going to be so that we can calculate an appropriate amount of distance between the floor and the wall. The agent height is how high or how tall we assume our characters are going to be. The max slope defines the steepest angle a character can walk up. If an angle is steeper or more extreme than this max slope, it becomes a wall and our characters can't move up or down it. The step height determines the tallest a protrusion can be from the NavMesh and still be considered a step or something our characters can just walk up. Any higher than the step height, then the protrusion is just considered a wall. We also have a section for generated off-mesh links. Off-mesh links effectively allow us to combine several NavMeshes together and allow our characters to jump from one NavMesh to another, say over a gap or across rooftops or anything like that. We're really not going to look too deeply at those right now. We also have advanced settings, but those are a little bit beyond what we need for this project, so we're going to leave those alone for now. You may have noticed that the main scene of the Zombie Toys project is open. I'm going to bake the NavMesh for our project. This NavMesh will be necessary in later chapters for our enemies and allies to move around the scene. Baking the NavMesh is actually very simple. In order to do that, all I'm going to do is look at the bottom of the navigation window and click Bake. I can now see a blue sort of covering to my level. This is our NavMesh. Don't worry, the whole project didn't get covered in blue. We only see this blue part while the navigation window is open. If I look around the scene, I'm actually going to notice a couple of problems. First off, I notice that the spinning top is not a part of the NavMesh. In order to understand why, we have to understand what is required for an object to be part of a NavMesh. If I look at the robot right next to the spinning top, I will see that it is marked as static in the upper right-hand corner of the inspector. This object was marked as static in a previous chapter when you were baking lighting. You may remember, as part of that checkbox, there are actually many types of static. The requirement for an object to be part of the NavMesh is for it to be navigation static. Now you might be thinking, well, the spinning top should also be static because you did that in a previous chapter as well. I've gone ahead and went and undid that step. If I click on the spinning top right now, you can see that it is in fact not static. I turned that off so that you can see what would happen if an object was not in fact navigation static. I'm going to go ahead and remake it static right now. Seeing the effect of this change is quite simple. I'm just going to go back to the navigation window and rebake my NavMesh. The other problem I'm going to notice is if I look at this hole in the wall. We can see the NavMesh doesn't actually go inside this hole in the wall, but we want enemies to be able to spawn inside that hole in the wall and then walk out. The reason is that the hole is not quite tall enough for the settings of our NavMesh. If I look at the navigation window settings under the Bake tab, I can see that our agent height is currently set at 2. Well, that's actually pretty tall, and our agents don't need to be that tall. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to something like 1.2. Now I'm going to go ahead and rebake that. And we can see now that the navigation mesh extends into the hole in the wall, and when we spawn our enemies, they'll just walk out of that hole in the wall. Now that our NavMesh is baked and good to go, It's ready for us to use in later chapters for our characters, specifically our enemies and our allies.